Exotic dancer Sharay Hayes, better known as The Punisher, testified at Diddy's trial in Manhattan yesterday. He's also the author of a new book called In Search of Freezer Meat, and he joins me now. Well, welcome to Uncensored, Mr. Hayes. How do I call you? Is Mr. Hayes how you like to be called, or would you like to be called The Punisher?
Hayes, Sharay, whatever works best for you. I believe it or not, I get called The Punisher more than I get called my government name, so I'm fine with either one.
First of all, I mean, how are you dealing with the fact that, you know, you were pretty well unknown before this? Now everybody knows you as The Punisher. It's a weird thing to happen to you in your life. How are you dealing with that?
Believe it or not, locally, it's pretty still consistent. In the New York City area, I've been dancing like I testified to for 30 years, and I did reach a decent degree of local popularity. So it's pretty much still the same scenario for me in terms of interacting and people knowing me for being an exotic dancer. I think the part of it that's difficult is not the Punisher thing. It's I went from a dancer to male prostitute, possible escort, based on this scenario, which is not actually accurate.
The court heard that you estimated you took part in 8 to 10 of the Diddy sex parties, which took place exclusively in New York. Sometimes they took multiple days. They would begin sometimes at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. On the stand, Cassie Ventura detailed graphic sexual scenarios or freak-offs with Sean Diddy Combs. She dropped allegations of drug usage, violence, blackmail, even rape. At the centre of this, it seems to me, is going to be the issue of consent, as to whether she was consenting to all this as a willing participant in this. What is your view? I mean, do you believe this was all consensual? Or do you think that, as the prosecution want the jury to believe, this was all coercion, control, and criminal?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm only privy to the circumstances that I was a part of. And as similar to I testified to, I didn't get any cues, didn't have any thing that would lead me to believe in the moment that she was under any duress or any forced scenario. It was presented to me that this was something that she wanted to create for her husband. You know, for the majority of the time I interacted with them, I believed they were a married couple. And I believed, based on me following them on Instagram and whatever interactions that I seen, although minimally, it seemed like a normal situation. I didn't get any cues to it being a distressful environment.
I mean, people, you know, you say normal. A lot of people have been pretty shocked by the details coming out of this court case. For most people, I would argue this is not normal sexual behaviour, to call in and pay somebody like you, in Diddy's case, to come on and have sex with his girlfriend as he watches. Most people don't view that as normal. Other people might, right? So I'm not here to judge the normality or otherwise of it. But was there anything about what happened when you were there which unsettled you?
I mean, so I agree with you about normal. When I used the word normal, I was talking about the interactions between him and her, just as far as their scenarios. I didn't get any cues that there was some tension or an intense environment. As far as the sexual scenario, even with me being in the exotic dancer business for many years, that environment was very uncomfortable for me. It was something I was not used to, something that I'd never took part of in any type of extensive scenario. So it was definitely uncomfortable, but it didn't, at the same time, it still didn't appear, other than us trying to create this scene and some of the direction that I did sense some frustration. I said in my testimony, I saw her sigh at times and look frustrated at the cues and the direction I was given. Other than that stuff, I didn't see anything that was off. And again, even me mentioning it in trial, it was in hindsight, because if there were no allegations, I might not have read into it at all.
The first time you met them both was at a hotel room in Trump Tower, owned, of course, by the now President of the United States. It's on Central Park West. I stayed there myself when I did The Apprentice years ago. I believe Cassie Ventura, you testified, greeted you at the door in a bathrobe, and you were specifically told not to acknowledge Sean Diddy Combs, who was sitting in the corner. He was wearing a veil over his face, but you knew it was him, I presume.
I did not.
Oh, you
I
didn't
did
notice
not.
him?
I did not know. I did not recognize her. And again, his face was completely covered to the degree where you could only see his eyes. So I was totally unaware of who they were. Actually leaving, I tried to do some Google searches because obviously I understood that this was some sort of a prominent couple, but because she initially said they were married, I recall searching married couples, married couples, married couples, and I was going to draw a blank because they're in fact not married.
You testified that the man was nude, wearing a Muslim-like face covering, and that he was masturbating in the corner while he watched you with his girlfriend, and that said that Cassie and this man then left the room after about half an hour. When she came back, she asked you whether you wanted to finish. This was the quote used, and you declined. You were then paid an additional $1,200 and left the hotel. So at what point did you realize this was Diddy, one of the most famous rappers in the world?
I mean, embarrassingly, I have to say, this duration of these meetups went on from 2012 to 2015, and it might have been well over a year into interacting with them before I figured it out. And I never figured it out visually. And what happened was we checked in a hotel they used called the Essex House. There was usually a waiting period before any of the sexual interactions would happen. And just killing time in a room that I was told to sit in, I cut on the TV, and the TV happened to have a welcome message, and it said the Essex House would like to welcome Mr. Sean Combs. And it was just like a holy crap moment. I was completely unaware. And even more embarrassing about it was I followed him on Instagram. I followed him on Instagram. I routinely saw his posts, and I did not put it together at all.
Once you realized, and it's an extraordinary way to find out, when did you let them know you knew who they were, or did you not?
I did not. I obviously I realized there was a long period of time with them hiding their identity. Cassie would try to wear wigs, which was kind of ineffective, but I didn't recognize her anyway. And, Mr. Combs went great lengths for me not to realize it. So I never said anything directly. But at some point, he took off the covering anyway and just started wearing a baseball cap, so I could visually see him.
I mean, that's a weird thing, isn't it? You see one of the most famous rappers in the world, and he is directing you to have sex with his girlfriend.
Yes, absolutely. Me personally, going through it, I remember making up my own stories where I figured this was a scenario where obviously he's this famous rapper and he's gonna indulge in plenty of women, and this is his girlfriend, and this is kind of like okay, I'm doing all of this, so now you get an opportunity. That was a story I made up for myself. There was also a story that I believed at some point that maybe he, in fact, had erectile dysfunction. I had a situation earlier in my career, the only one time before, where I was propositioned to deal with someone's wife, and that was the circumstances where the husband had a sexual issue, and he was doing this to supplement his own inabilities. So I remember while this was going on, I had a belief that maybe that was going on with Mr. Combs. I had no idea that this was just more of a fetish type of scenario.
Many people think he was very obviously bisexual, if not actually gay. I mean, do you have any insight into that from your interactions with him?
Not from my interactions. Growing up in Harlem and being into hip hop culture, there have always been rumors surrounding his sexuality. But I will say firsthand that I didn't have any experiences. The entire 2.5 years, I literally never had a conversation, never even had eye contact. And I don't think almost every circumstance he was across the room in a corner, kind of out of sight. I was instructed coming in to not look at him, acknowledge him, have any interactions with him. So in regards to what his sexuality and his preference would be in regards to me being present, there was so much distance, him being away, all of his conversation and interaction went towards Cassie that I can't speak to anything in regards to his sexuality.
When did it end, all this? When did you stop getting calls on them?
The last call I got was sometime around March 2015, as I testified to. It had been quite a few months in between since I interacted with them. And ironically, maybe 6-7 months before, I had a really bad injury where I tore my bicep. So in that last interaction, I was showing up after not being able to work out, not being to keep up my physical standard to what I usually, what they were accustomed to. And again, this is my own speculation. And then in that last circumstance, there was a request for me to have penetrative sex with Miss Ventura. That the pressure of the situation or whatever, I was able to not perform. So I assumed that the combination of me not being able to perform and physical condition not being up to its usual, I feared that would, I guess, quote unquote, get me fired from the interaction. And that ended up being the last time I had interactions with them.
Who actually organized this? I mean, who was doing the interactions with you, the payments and so on?
I only ever spoke to and interacted with Miss Ventura, from telephone calls to text messages to when I was greeted at the hotel room to even cordial conversations before and after the sexual play I described. All my interactions was with her.
A lot of people have heard about these freak-offs. These are these parties which Diddy would have where there would be various layers to the party, and then it would end up with a lot of depravity going on with a number of people. Clearly, you were engaged in a scenario here which some might think is a form of freak-off, but others might see as just a couple engaging in kinky sex. When you hear that term freak-off, from your experience, was there anything freaky about what you went through or what they put you through?
No, I would have to say in my experience, no. I had a similar belief, like, again, growing up in Harlem and in a culture where, Mr. Combs was very influential, the rumors were all about the parties and the layers to the parties and these big orgy-style sex scenarios. And that's what my assumption and belief was a freak-off constituted. This scenario here, I would use a phrase which is called cuckolding. And that's something that is spoke about kind of commonly in regards to men and their wives and seeking other men to give them pleasure. I would say we are a bachelorette-themed company, my company, Hunkomania, that throws bachelorette events, and we routinely get couples that come in, and the guy is getting lap dances for his woman and enjoying her pleasure and interacting with the guy. So it is something that I see routinely at the club, just not the next step of when it goes to a hotel room. That was the oddity to me.
It's interesting. It's interesting
so
because
I don't.
Yeah, I was going to say that the video we saw of him beating Cassie Ventura up in a hotel corridor is truly shocking. It's incontrovertible. He apologized for that. Clearly, he is a man capable of violence against women, including his own girlfriend. But the big question here is whether that level of violence and coercion and control became a crime of trafficking, racketeering, and so on. Are you surprised about the charges that he's facing? Do you think he is capable of what he's being accused of doing?
I am surprised. Me personally, I really did follow the instructions of the prosecution, where they told me to avoid a lot of the details of the case and testimony of other witnesses. So I don't have a strong opinion on his guilt or capability or whatever's going on. I like to remain an unbiased or not have any bias in my perception of the situation. I just think it's extremely sad. My interactions, I've tried to truthfully explain them and recount them the best way that I could. I expressed that I didn't see any violence or aggression or anything that would constitute what his accusations are. And I don't have a strong opinion either way, because I just really didn't hear enough of the facts. So I just look at it as accusations now. Based on my interaction, I just didn't see anything that aligned with what the charges are. But I'm also naive to the interpretation of the law.
I mean, Sharay, it seems to me that your evidence could end up being pretty fundamental and very important, because the picture you've painted is of something that went on for over 2 years, 8 to 10 encounters, and it appears that Cassie Ventura was leading all the interactions with you, with the calling, the texting, and so on, the payments, and that everything that she was doing with you appeared to be willing on her part, consensual, with Sean Diddy Combs sitting in the corner. And people might take a moral view about what they're up to, but from a purely reality perspective, nothing you've said suggests to me that she was being forced into this against her will.
Yeah, I mean, in transparency, I was first time contacted about my involvement in March of 2024. And literally up until, I want to say about a month before they told me I was testifying, I was sure that there was no way they were going to call me. Most of my interviews was dismissive, where I was like, look, guys, I don't really have any information for you that I think is significant to your case. Here's my details. Here you go. And I was kind of flippant with my involvement because I was, very clear that I didn't see any aggression. I didn't see any signs that are overtly clear that she was in distress. And, in the signs that I did see, I only recognized them in hindsight of after the allegations came about. So I was extremely surprised to even being called to testify, because myself, the majority of the time, I didn't think my interaction was significant in any way, shape, or form.
Did you have any more contact with Cassie Ventura after you stopped meeting with them?
I did not. I tried to, halfway through when I realized who they were, I was trying to be extremely respectful and respecting their privacy on every level. I was a fan of Mr. Combs growing up, and I had a great respect for him. So in terms of having any outside interactions with what I believed was his, loving companion, I thought they were, based on seeing their Instagram page, they looked like they were in a loving relationship. And I felt any contact with her outside of that environment would have been disrespectful.
You saw Sean Diddy Combs in court. You never caught his eye in the whole time that you were interacting with him and Cassie Ventura. Did you catch his eye in court?
In all honesty, coming in, I avoided eye contact to any degree. It was a very nerve-wracking situation for me initially. It's just, no matter how much you prep, no matter what you think about it, there's nothing that could really prepare you for that circumstance. And I am aware that I'm testifying for the prosecution, and my testimony can be very damaging to his future and what the rest of his life looks like. So I avoided eye contact. But at the end of the day, after my testimony, which, was just the truth, and it's been emphasized to me since I got involved to just tell the truth. That's all I care about. As long as I tell the truth, is fine. I felt confident leaving the courtroom. I did look at him directly. There was no intense stare or anything or whatever. He kind of acknowledged me. I acknowledged him. And that was it. So, and that gave me relief, because again, I'm testifying is something I don't have a choice in, and I felt that I told the truth based on my involvement, without any bias, without any influence of opinion, ideology, and I'm at peace with that. I believe that was based on my integrity. That's what was asked of me, and I felt like that's what I represented myself as doing.
I mean, Sharay, what an extraordinary moment that is for you, where after spending 2.5 years in their orbit, Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura, and maybe as many as a dozen encounters in hotel rooms, where you never had eye contact with this globally famous rapper as you had sex with his girlfriend, you finally get eye contact in a courtroom as you're testifying for the prosecution against him in a case that may determine whether he's going to keep his liberty or his career or anything else. As you say, you grew up as a fan of his in Harlem. That is a moment, isn't it? A remarkable moment for you.
Yeah, I mean, just you pointing that out, something I hadn't really connected, but that is in fact exactly what it is. That was literally the first time I've had eye contact with him, and it's in such a powerful moment, and a moment that is really life or death for him. It's definitely surreal. It's definitely, I get some sort of an anxious feeling just thinking about it. And it's tough, man. It's tough. Me personally, just the idea of my experience and my testimony or whatever being something that can tip the scale away into justice or the proper outcome for either person involved, the victims or him being accused, is just something I would like to not have to be an influence or a factor in.
Just finally, there's been a lot of online speculation, as there is about everything, and a lot of it is nonsense, obviously, but there's been speculation that you and Cassie developed a kind of emotional bond, as well as a physical one in the period that you were seeing her with Diddy there. What's your view of that? I mean, could you have completely detached sex with a woman in that way for that period of time over 2.5 years and not have some kind of emotional bond with her?
So yeah, I was asked about that during cross-examination, and I spoke to it and said I believe it was taken out of context. I think where the emotional part of this was interpreted was I did take a sense of pride. Like I felt special because I believed that this scenario was isolated to me and their interaction. And my initial conversations with Cassie was, hey, I want to call you back because I'm comfortable with you. So me hearing that and having this fantasy of me being the special guy that they call on, and then her cordial interactions and stuff, I was grateful. I was fond. I was flattered. Right? It was an ego stroke, if I can just be honest as a man, that this beautiful woman is choosing me, and that was my assumption. So there was gratitude. There was a positive vibe that was extremely happy and appreciative to be in that position, the way that I interpreted it at the time. And I think me trying to explain this to investigators might have got misconstrued into me developing a romantic connection. I never thought my interactions with her was something that could infringe on the bond between her and Mr. Combs. So I was just grateful to be chosen and comfortable and looked at as an option for this fantasy fetish that they were trying to create.
It's a remarkable story, and you're a remarkable part of it. I think you spoke about it with great eloquence and honesty, and I really appreciate you coming on to Uncensored and talking to me about it. So, Sharay Hayes, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.